Two.
Yeah, I saw it.
All right. Good evening, ladies and joins. This is the second installment of Abyssal Musings. With me is my co-host, Lawrence Knight. Y'all know me as Samuel the Infamous. Let's get into it. First of all, we got a poll going. I'm going to let that run for a little while till we get some more people in, just because I think it's funny. It's just something that occurred to me. You're all here for my amusement. Ha 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 ha. That was my Zuckerberg laugh. So, welcome, guys. Josh, welcome. Good to see you.
Big Josh.
Ozzy,
You guys have to
welcome.
excuse the avatar for now. I'm doing some things with my PC, so it's kind of low priority right now.
7-1. My week has been busy. How's yours? Good to see you. So, we got a poll running right now. It's goofy. It's pointless. But we're gonna probably let that run for a while. So I don't know. I don't have like a time limit on it. I'll just throw it out when we get there. So far it's 50-50 though. I'm liking the results. All right. So Larry, you had a topic for us this week.
Yeah, I thought we might since we're going into October, I thought we might have a continuation of our discussion about scary movies,
Sure.
which is something I get a kick out of, but it's a good time to kind of expand on that. So I know you're a big Hellraisers freak.
Yeah, well, let me clarify that for people. Okay, so when I was in junior high, not even then, actually grade school, it was probably 5th or 6th grade, I discovered Clive Barker, who was the author who wrote The Hellbound Heart, which is what all of the Hellraiser stuff is based on.
Right.
Read most of his stuff up to that point. I haven't read, I think the most recent thing I read of his was The Scarlet Gospel, which came out a few years ago, and I had been waiting like 20 years for that book, and it was a huge disappointment. But that aside, so when I was younger than that, actually, I was at one of my uncle's houses in the Midwest, and they had rented 2 movies. One of them was Under Siege with Steven Seagal, and what a movie. And the other one was Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. And I'm sitting there, I'm probably, I don't know, maybe 9 years old, and I'm sitting there watching Pinhead tear the shit out of people. And anyway, long story short, kind of got hooked. So I looked up the original movie. It came out in 1987. It's actually with a few key minor differences that don't really affect the story much. Pretty much verbatim what the novella is. And then the second one is definitely a direct sequel to the first one. And then you get 3, which takes a huge departure. 4 ties in, but only sort of. And I mean, let's be honest, the whole last third of that movie is Pinhead in space. The 5th movie is the only one that I do not have in my personal collection because I fucking hate it. And the reason that I hate it is because that was the first one where they really leaned into the Judeo-Christian concept of heaven and hell and good and evil and all that stuff. Before that, it was a totally separate thing. Depraved, sure, but it had nothing to do with that. And that was the first one where they really leaned into that. And that was kind of a theme that they kept going off and on throughout the series. But that was the first one, and it left a bad taste in my mouth, and I still hate that fucking movie, and I will never own it. 6th one, they brought Ashley Lawrence from the first 2 movies back, and she actually has a cameo in part 3, a brief one. And then the 7th and 8th movies came out in the same year, made by the same studio, in a rush, in Romania, where it's cheap to film, because Dimension wanted to hold on to the rights. So they had to get those out. So it's kind of hard to tell which one comes before the other. Neither of them have anything to do with each other. The only thing they have in common is the fact that, Pinhead's in them. Actually, One of them, Hell World, has a young Henry Cavill in it. um, and of course, he dies horribly. But it also, that movie has like the same plot as Pumpkinhead.
Mm.
And in fact, Lance Henriksen's in it just like he's in Pumpkinhead, playing basically the same role. And then they did, and that was the last. Those were the last two movies that Doug Bradley played Pinhead in. After that, they got, I don't remember the other actors who followed, what their names are. They got another guy for the ninth movie, which was kind of a soft reboot. Um, and it was, let's just say it has a lot more in common with Hostel than it does with Hellraiser. And
Okay.
also, the guy who played Pinhead in it was fucking terrible. And it wasn't totally his fault. Some of that was the direction. Some of that was just the makeup looked fucking awful. Um, and I don't mean like horrifying. I mean like badly done. Um, the guy in the 10th movie, Judgment, was better than the guy in the ninth movie, but he was no Doug Bradley. And that one kind of, again, leaned into the Judeo-Christian stuff. And now, here, next week, I believe, actually on the 7th, on Hulu, Clive Barker finally got the rights back. He's been very vocal for many years about how he hated what the franchise turned his creation into, and he hated the fan base who loved those movies because that wasn't what he envisioned at all. And it got away from him. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
And so he finally got the rights back, and then and before he did that, he wrote Scarlet Gospel, which is a movie or a book where he faces off two of his most famous characters, one of them being the Hell Priest or Pinhead, and the other one being Harry D'Amour from. He was only ever in one movie. It was The Lord of Illusions, based on a short novel called The Last Illusion, or a short story rather. That character appears in several other books that he wrote, though. Like it is in Everville, for example. Plays a bigger role there. And the two of them go head to head, and it's about them like facing off in hell and all that. And the whole point was to kill off Pinhead forever because he hated the character and what it had become. Now, in the original novella, none of the Cenobites are given names or nicknames. They're just described graphically. And the character who was described as having a grid tattoo on the face with pins at each juncture was androgynous to the point where you couldn't actually tell if it was male or female, including the voice. And so with this new one, they have a transgender actor playing the role. And part of the reason that normally I would be like, oh, blah, 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 they're just fucking with, long-standing stuff. Part of the reason I don't have an issue with that is because Clive Barker himself had a lot to do with this. And the way that he originally wrote that character, it's not that far off. So I don't really have that issue with it. And from what I can tell, they're not really leaning into trans anything. They're just, here's a creepy character, which is fine. I'm good with that. But I am looking forward to it. We'll likely do a review on it. And so, long story short, guys, yes, I likes me some Hellraiser. Long story short, too late.
No, you know what? I have to admit that is a lot more detail than I expected you to get. But you know what? I'm glad you said that because it gave me time to look at something that's gonna really piss you off. Because as much as you love Hellraiser, I'm pretty sure that you've got to wonder, where does Hellraiser rank among all the scary movies from the 80s and the 90s, which is what I looked at. Now, seeing with what you just told me about Clive Barker, I don't think that this is gonna bother you much anymore. But I just looked up a few different sources. The scariest movies of the 1980s and the 50 scariest movies of the 1990s, and actually in the top 15 of the 1990s. Not one Hellraiser movie is on that list. There's movies on that list that aren't scary at all.
Oh,
And
that
to me,
doesn't
a
surprise me.
couple of them were downright goofy.
Okay, my first question would be, who made the list?
Where you want me to start, the 80s or the 90s?
Either way, but is this a recent list?
Let's see.
Because
2001.
oh shit, so no, it's not a recent list.
I mean, it's recent enough.
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
mean,
20 years.
you're talking about the 80s and the 90s. Well, the top 50 horror movies for the 1990s is 2022.
Okay, so that's pretty recent. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you said 2021 for the first time, didn't you? I thought you said 2001.
No, it's 2021.
Okay, I was just like
Uh,
2001's closer to the original
yeah,
Hellraiser than we are.
yeah, and the 15 best horror movies of the 1990s is 2017. So that one's got, it's got what, 5 years on it. But let's see. Let's start with the 80s. The top 15, the top 10 of the 1980s. I don't
Okay.
agree with this, but at number 10 they put The Shining, which I think should have been a bit higher on that list.
I mean, yes and no.
You don't
I
think so?
well, here's the thing. I don't have an issue with the story. I think that the actors in it were fantastic. I just don't really like Stanley Kubrick movies. I don't think he's a particularly good director. He tends to do very long movies where not a lot happens.
Hey, maybe that's part of the formula though. It puts you to sleep, and then all of a sudden, bam! You,
Well,
yeah, you,
take 2001: A Space Odyssey for example, man. The whole first section of that, right? Apes
yeah.
figure out how to use weapons of war, and then they play "Thus Spake Zarathustra," and then cut fast forward to the year 2001, which at the time was still in the future, and it's just a dude on a space station arguing with his computer for like 3 fucking hours until there's a space baby for no reason. And it's all set. It's just shit floating in classical space, floating in space for 3 hours, set to classical music, and it's really boring.
I'm glad I never watched it.
Yeah,
I tried to, but the first half hour put me to sleep. I mean, I was a kid, you
yeah.
know.
Yes, I
Um,
have. By the way,
yeah,
much better on paper.
Ozzy. Yeah. Um, here's number 9. Now, here's a movie that I made a mistake of watching when I was 8 years old. It's one of the two movies that I made a mistake watching. An American Werewolf in London.
That movie's great.
It is great. It scared the hell out of me. It's also what created my love for werewolves.
I have a story about that movie.
Really.
I do. So I was about 4 years old the first time I saw it, and y'all might be thinking like, "Well, god damn, what kind of parents did you have?" But I mean, it was the '80s. What do you want? Uh, so I watched that with my mother, and she did not, she doesn't handle horror movies very well. And of course, I'm 4 years old, so I just loving it because my favorite movie of all time is Jaws, and I saw that when I was 3, and it's been my favorite ever since. Uh, so after we finished the movie, she goes to put me to bed, right? And we lived in this trailer house, and it had one of those like really long hallways between the living area and then the back bedroom, and there was my bedroom was just off of that hallway, but
Mm.
it's really long and dark at night. And so she puts me to bed, and apparently I lay awake for like 4 hours waiting for someone to walk down that hallway so I could start howling when they passed my room. And it was my mother, and it scared the ever loving daylights out of her.
I was just thinking that too. Like the added gift of being able to scare the hell out of your mother. That had to be funny. I used to get a kick out of that when I was a kid too.
Why
But
was that a bad idea, Ozzy? That movie's great.
yeah, I had to do jump scares on her. She didn't. I don't remember. I don't remember my mother really watching scary movies. I'm not sure that it bothered her. I'll have to ask her that sometime.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to ask her that.
So, but the
Um,
other the other notable thing about that particular movie were the special effects, which I think were done by
mhm.
Stan Winston Studios. They were
Oh yeah,
groundbreaking at the time. They
yeah, they
still
were.
hold up. The transformation scene was the first time any werewolf thing had been
Yep.
done, in sequence, in
Hmm.
full lighting, and it was amazing then. It's amazing now. And funny story, some of his apprentices, because he contracted for 2 different movies that same
Right.
year, both of which involved werewolves. The other one was The Howling. Well, he
Hmm.
couldn't do both, so he sent his apprentice over to take care of The Howling, which is why some of the transformation sequence stuff in that
It's
seems very
exactly
similar,
like
is
yeah.
because it
I
came out of the
remember.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the documentary when they were saying that, and the howling is the other one. Now, I didn't get to see The Howling until it might have been about 8 years ago.
Hmm.
I saw all the others, and then I went back and saw the first one, and boy was I, it made me so sad because I thought the others were great until it got to like, the sixth one. I think the fourth one wasn't that good, but just watching the first one made me realize just how great that franchise could have been and should have been. You know, I think that the closest one to the eeriness and scariness that the first Howling had, for me, the closest one was the Howling Five. The others were a bit more campy.
Yeah, they got progressively dumber.
Yeah,
What was the second one? I think was your sister is a werewolf.
yeah,
The
and
third
that
one
that
was the
was
marsupials.
yeah, that one was dumb. The second one was over sexualized. I mean, they were just doing stuff. It
Mhm.
didn't make any sense to do it. And like you said, the marsupials was just
Dumb.
it. You know what? It's basically their version of Halloween season of the witch.
Yeah, that fair enough. That makes sense. Yeah, Halloween season of the witch. Well, the reason for that was because it was initially going to be a series of an anthology series of movies. Each one was going to have a different story taking place at that time of year. But because season of the witch bombed, they just went back to Michael Myers in the fourth one.
They never should have left him.
Yeah, I agree. And so do they, which is why all of the other Halloween movies are about him except that one. But it was originally supposed to be an anthology series of different stories, different horror stories during that time.
Right. Let's see. Let's go down to number 8 on this one.
Oh, real quick though, The
Yeah.
Howling also has one of the single most disturbing sex scenes I have ever seen in my life.
Oh, the one where he turns into
While they're by the fire, yeah, that
Running
whole
by the
thing.
fire.
Man, and some of that's even like hand drawn animation, and it's
Yeah,
still just like Jesus.
the way it happened. Yeah, that was
You
that
know,
was. I was thinking about that last night too.
that's a hell of an STD.
Yeah.
You know?
Hey, but she was a wolf too, so I mean, it's not like she didn't catch anything. Boy, that lady was scary. Man, she played that part. Um,
She did, and the ending of that movie was actually brilliant.
yeah, it was.
You
It
know,
was.
Dee Wallace was fantastic. Robert Picardo, who plays Eddie in that movie, the
Mhm.
serial killing werewolf,
Yeah,
um, went on later to achieve a lot of fame in the sci-fi arena.
yeah, yeah. The one thing I don't remember about watching that movie, how did the main character? I believe the actress is Dee Wallace. Am I correct?
Yes.
How did she become a werewolf at the end? I don't remember her getting bit.
Um, I'm gonna have to rewatch it. My sister's got my copy right now, but I think it happened when she was trying to get away at the end when they had locked all. Spoilers, guys, came out in '81. Um, yeah, but she's trying to get away from after they locked most of the werewolves in the barn, set that on fire, and then she was attacked by that one in the car. Her and the other guy who were trying to get away, but the one in the car was actually her husband, who had cheated on her with Marsha and become a
Right.
werewolf there. And I think he scratches her in that
Oh yeah.
scene, and
Yeah,
then
because that's how
yeah,
he got it. That's how
yeah,
he. Right. That must have been how it happened. That makes sense.
too late.
Let's
Sorry.
see. The next one on this list, number 8. I'm not sorry, mandatory,
Yeah, dick.
but a big one. BBC gang. Anyway. Anyway.
Moving on.
Hey, you know what the funny thing is too is if mandatory had been in The Shining, not in Jack Nicholson's character, but as like the caretaker or something like that.
Shit, I could see that.
Like somebody that saves the kid at the end.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that.
I can see him doing that. Let's see. Going back to number 8 on the list. Now this one I never saw, so I have no opinion on it. It is a John Carpenter movie. It is The Thing.
You never saw The Thing?
I never saw it.
Oh, dude. First of all, it is a remake of a '50s movie, but which was also pretty good, but it wasn't. John Carpenter made it much better. It's got Keith David's in it. Russell, Kurt Russell stars
Mhm.
in it. Got a bunch of guys in it. And it is probably to date the single best Lovecraft inspired cosmic horror movie ever made. And it's a John Carpenter movie, and that's, I mean, the guy's known a little bit for camp. Um,
Yeah.
Takes place in Antarctica. That one I actually won't talk too much about because it was so well done, and I think you should see it. I think everybody should see it. And yeah, it's a great cosmic horror movie. Check it out.
Yeah, you know
And
what?
it's creepy as shit.
I'll add that to the Halloween list. We should discuss that with a certain lioness and see if she wants to do like a closed circuit movie night. Get some popcorn and stuff, and
Yeah, maybe. I don't know that she does a lot of horror movies, but
well, that's the beauty of it. We get to watch her flip out.
well, we could just not tell her what we're watching.
That's what I'm saying.
One of these days, I'm going to get her to admit that Jaws is better than fucking Borat.
I think.
Oh, did I lose you? I think you muted, folks. Well, while we're waiting for Larry to come back here, seen that in the original and the remake. Fair enough. That's a fair point. The original was actually quite good. I did like it quite a bit. Yeah, Ozzy, the Apocalypse trilogy, I think, is what it's referred to generally, and all three of those movies are based on Lovecraft.
Hey,
Larry,
can
you
you hear
back?
me?
Yeah,
That was weird.
yeah. Your audio cut out totally.
Yeah, that was odd. Um,
Yep.
Man, that was really odd. I forgot what I was saying.
I think you were making a point about the thing, or you were moving on to the next one. I forget which.
Might have been moving on. I think I was moving on to the next one. Let's see. Now this one, I'd never heard. I've never heard of it until I looked up this list. Video Drone.
Oh, that is a Cronenberg movie. David Cronenberg. It's one of his more famous ones. I have not seen that movie in like 30 years, so my recollection of it is pretty minimal. Same guy who did Scanners, who remade The Fly. He did a movie with Viggo Mortensen called A History of Violence. It's actually a very good crime movie. You probably haven't seen Nightbreed either.
I have, but it's been
Okay.
a while.
So the guy who runs around with the sackcloth mask looks like Scarecrow from Batman, right? That's David Cronenberg.
Oh, Sam. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't direct that movie, but he did act in it. So,
all right, that's the list. Now here's the one. Here's the one that I really should not have watched as a kid, but I did. American Werewolf in London. Like I said, that created my love, for werewolves. But A Nightmare on Elm Street, boy, I couldn't. Ooh, I could not sleep.
oh, the original.
The original, pretty much every. Well, I mean, certain ones were better than others. Like the second one was just flat out boring for me. The first one was scary.
Yeah, nobody remembers the second one fondly. The third one and the fourth one are pretty good. The fifth one is gets like even trippier and it's a little off the rails. The sixth one sucks, but it's still kind of fun. And then you had Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which I think holds up right up there with the first one. As those two are the best, the bookends of that series.
Well, you know what Wes Craven said about the New Nightmare. Did you ever watch the interview when they asked him?
I think he said he started writing it because he had started having nightmares again.
Yeah, it was that, and what he said was when he went to the studio and they, put A Nightmare on Elm Street together and had Freddy Krueger and everything, and they put him out. all of the Freddy Krueger movies, that is not the actual Freddy Krueger that he envisioned. Just like what happened with Pinhead.
Right. Well, and
Then
that's
what's
usually how it goes once the
yeah,
studio gets their hooks in something.
yeah. The new Nightmare is actually the way that Freddy is act. That's the way that he actually is.
Right. And
That's
it's
what he was
also
supposed to be.
it's the first time since the original movie that he made where Freddy's actually scary again and not just like some wisecracking asshat with knives for fingers.
Right, right. And
You know.
that's what he was saying. He was like, he said, he showed the original drawings. He's wearing a trench coat and just looking
Hmm.
creepy. And Wes Craven said he was never supposed to be telling those jokes and saying all the things that he was saying.
Yeah.
Now, I will say
Carrie,
this.
go
Hmm?
ahead.
No, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say Carrie's going to have to clarify that.
Yes, Nightmare on Elm
Nightmare
Street
on Elm
was
Street.
loosely based on actual. I heard about that, but I don't know how loosely it's based on actual events.
Because I know the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie was, but it was
Yeah,
very, very loosely based on Ed Gein, along with a half dozen other movies.
yeah.
So you were saying, sorry.
No, no, not at all. I can't believe I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, now I will say putting Freddy Krueger to me was the scary. He was scarier than for me. He was scarier than Michael Myers, which is saying a lot. He was scarier than Jason. But when I saw Pinhead and I thought about it, if those two got into a fight, I think Pinhead is the one person that would truly put the fear in Jason and Freddy. I think I really believe that.
Maybe, maybe. I don't think that they'd necessarily be in the same regions because, we know from the movies and from the crossovers and shit that Freddy, uh, he appears to be able to come and go at will, but he is tied to a hell,
Yeah.
right? But I don't think it's the same hell.
No, but I would think that if it's a hell, Pinhead may have access to get into the hell, But I'm saying if those two were in the same area, if
Mhm.
they got into the fight that Freddy got into with Jason, I think Pinhead. I don't think that he'd want to mess with Pinhead. I think he will go up against Jason. I think he will go up against Michael. But I think Pinhead. I think he'd think twice about that.
I think that the one thing that Freddy has over everybody else would probably be useless against Pinhead because Cenobites don't sleep.
Yeah.
You know, um, Jason might be another story. I mean, brute force counts for a lot.
Yeah, but he's afraid of, and that was kind of weird with the Freddy versus Jason because because they made it so that Jason was afraid of water, and that didn't make any sense to me because it's like, well, how
What did
could
you?
he be afraid of water and all the people he killed in the water?
Yeah, well, to
It
be
didn't make any
fair,
sense.
you have a point there. You do. What they were doing was because he had been in hell recently. I think they were playing on the fact that that's how he died initially, as
Right,
a boy. Was he drowned to death? And I imagine that what was happening there wasn't so much that he remains afraid of water, but Freddy was playing on that part of his psyche that remembers the terror of drowning.
right, right. You're
I
right.
now I don't want to read too much into it because let's face it, the
No, no,
movie
no.
wasn't
You're
that
right
fucking
because
deep.
you're right. No, you're right because now that I think about it, that is what he did because he had to look for something because everything else wasn't working.
Yeah,
Now, Michael Myers, on the other hand,
fears nothing.
he's not. Yeah, he, there's nothing he can do with Michael either.
No, because as far as I know, that guy doesn't sleep either.
Yeah.
Because if you watch those movies, especially the earlier ones, like with
Mhm.
Halloween, like Halloween 2, for example, he spends a huge amount of time in the daylight just stalking the people that he's going to go after.
Yeah.
So he's awake in the day, he's awake at night. He fucking teleports. Which is the only explanation for how he can continue to move so slowly and still be right behind you.
Well, Jason too, though.
Jason can do that too, but Jason's more of a force of nature, whereas Michael Myers kind of embodies the will of evil.
Yeah, there was some. magic involved with him. Looking into his backstory, there was some kind of cult that, there was some supernatural uh,
Oh, yeah.
forces.
Are you talking about? I think what you're talking about was when they got to like part 6, the one with Paul Rudd. That was where they started getting into like Celtic pagan shit.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That was I like that movie, but it kind of ruins the whole thing. My I had the same thing with the Alien. Like the not knowing is better than having a reason for these things.
yeah, and that's what they were saying about that movie, is that people wanted to go back to how it was before with Michael, where you don't know how is this guy able to do all this stuff, but and it kind of ruined it, and I think, just for me, Jamie Lee Curtis never should have got her hands on it because, man, these last few Halloween movies that she has been responsible for is killing the franchise if it hasn't already. What I would love to see is a good old fashioned style reboot, you know. And I don't know if that can happen at this point, because it's just like Friday the 13th. There's been so many of the movies,
Hmm.
and Friday the 13th has been rebooted, what, twice? You got the Rob Zombie version, and
I
then
think
hmm?
yeah. I thought that was the only reboot was they did
Maybe
because
it was.
no, he did no because Rob Zombie did the reboots of Halloween 1 and 2, and then he did a Friday the 13th reboot.
Yeah, and it's someone else. No, you're right. You're right. He
Yeah,
did.
none of those were
He did
good
the Michael
movies.
Myers. That's right.
Yeah,
Uh,
none of those were any good.
yeah,
It's and I had other problems with like. Did you see the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street with Jackie Earl Haley playing Freddy?
I did. You know what? And it's not that he did a bad job. It's
No,
just
he was fine. The
he
movie
was
wasn't
fine.
written well.
Yeah, it wasn't written well, and there's nobody can replace Robert England. I mean, Jackie came. He did very, very well, but Robert, just the way he played it, for me, it was just like, it just wasn't the same.
Right.
And I'm not sure that great writing would have made it different.
Well, and that's exactly my problem with other people besides Doug Bradley playing Pinhead is that he made that role his. He was the first person to play it, and he did it for so long that it's very difficult to see anybody else, no matter how good at it they are, as that character. Um, yeah, Ozzy. This is a true thing. He does do that. As a matter of fact, when you're watching say Wes Craven's New Nightmare, for example, when he realizes that Nancy has the power to fight back and like seriously hurt him, he stops joking. 100%. He just stops joking and he just does his thing. But prior to that, when he has all the power, of course he's cracking wise the whole time. Um, Although in a much more menacing way than he does in say like Freddy, Freddy's Revenge, which is the second part. Um, and yeah, he was. Here's I think the child molesting thing was hinted at in the original movies. In the remake, they flat out say it.
Yeah,
But I think it was hinted at, and especially in that second one, which got, let's face it, a little gay. Uh,
yeah, it was
you know,
a
but
little.
but the
It was
main thing was
overtly.
that, yeah, but the main thing was that he was a child killer.
Yeah,
They didn't really lean into the child molester angle as much. Again, it was hinted at, and in the second movie, strongly hinted at, but it's sort of downplayed in the rest of the series. But they did lean into that with the Jackie Earl Haley version. Um, yeah, 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 that's fair. I mean, to be fair, I watch a lot of these slasher flicks, like these supernatural slasher flicks, because it's cathartic to watch a bunch of idiot kids get fucking slaughtered. Yeah,
and it makes the parodies funny too, because you know why they're making fun of them. You
yeah,
know, that's what
yeah.
makes, and I think that's what makes Scream work too. It's like, oh, you have sex, now you got to die.
Sure,
It
but
was like,
they
of course.
now that was less from A Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween, because Halloween was a very like personal story. That wasn't like there wasn't a lot of allegory there. It was about this boy who just was black inside,
Mhm.
and just like he had like no soul behind his eyes, just evil. Um, Whereas on Friday the 13th, that whole series of movies, every one of them that takes place at camp, it's always camp counselors and always the ones who are dicking around with drugs or sex or what have you, because those were that was a morality play.
Mhm.
That was the same kind of shit that you got with like Reefer Madness. It's like don't mess with this stuff or bad things will happen to you. In this case, bad things being like skewered with a signpost, you know,
Yeah.
by a 7 foot unkillable zombie. Funny.
And that's the other thing too. The guy that played Jason, what is his name? I can't
Well, no, that are you referring to Kane Hodder because he didn't
Kane
come
Hodder.
into
Yeah,
he played Jason in like 4 or 5 of the like 10 movies that there are,
yeah,
but he did not play them in all of them, and he was not the first. There were like 3 other guys.
yeah, yeah.
Kane Hodder did it best. I
Yeah, he did
agree.
it best. But I thought he was a lot taller than he is. I think I read something saying that he was only 6 feet tall. I mean, of course, I was young when he did him. I was a child, but I thought the guy was like 6'8". They're like
Yeah,
this
well,
guy's 6 feet.
magic of camera work, they hired a bunch of short teenagers to play against him. So, um, yeah, Carrie. Generally, that's true. The Friday 13th ones were just on the nose about it. Is really the point I'm making. They weren't very subtle about it at all. Did you ever see Jason X?
I did.
Okay, so the bit where they're on the ship and they're trying to distract him from killing everybody, so he gets to the like
The fake camp counselors. Now that's
yes,
where he looks his
holy
height.
shit.
That's where
He
he looks his height.
that is still to this day one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen in horror ever. When he's got the camp counselors, the 2 chicks with no
The two
shirts on,
chicks, and he's just
and they're
throwing them
they're
around.
they're they're zipped up in their sleeping bags, and he's just beating one to death with the other one. It's one.
And they're like,
Oh
"Up, he's done with the camp counselors."
yeah, yeah, Carrie. That movie's not good. It's
No,
funny,
it's
but
not.
it's not scary at all. There are a few moments that are worth seeing, but the rest of it's kind of eh. But or the bit where he's locked in with this guy gets locked away from the other guys, and he's got the machete in there with him, and Jason shows up, and then he's like, oh my god, he's gonna kill me, and they're like, oh, we got to save him and all this stuff, and then he shouts, it's okay guys, he just wanted his machete back.
Yeah, that was stupid. That was stupid.
That movie is
Crazy.
terrible. I just did name 2. The scene with the camp counselors, and then the machete back scene. Those
I've
those are
heard of
those are the
Andromeda.
that's it, really. Um, Actually, yeah, there are 2 actresses from Andromeda in that movie. One of them plays an android, the other one plays a human being, which is funny because their roles were reversed on the Andromeda series. Although the android wasn't really the android, she was more like the avatar of the ship itself. But yeah,
And there was an android in Jason X, and that guy was she was attracted to the guy who built her.
yeah. So, but like Freddy versus Jason, man, I knew going in that was not going to be a good movie. I had this buddy at the time, and me and him would go see a movie every weekend, and we'd take turns picking. And it was my turn to choose. And he was really upset about the fact that I went with that one because he's like, this is going to be the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, it might be, but I think it'll be fun. So we went in
It
and we
was a
watched it.
fun movie. I didn't think it was bad.
Oh no, it was bad, but it had it had everything it advertised in it. It had a
I don't.
grudge
I
match
don't
between
think it
2
was bad.
titans. It had gratuitous blood, gratuitous
Yeah.
titties. That's all I cared about. I got exactly what I wanted out of that movie, just
I
like I
don't
got
think it was
exactly
bad
what I
though.
wanted out of Snakes on a Plane. It says everything you need to know about it in the title.
Come on, Sam. I think you're being a little hard on Freddy versus Jason. I thought it was. I thought it was. I mean, I'm not saying that it was
I
like
just said I liked it.
outstanding, but you said it was a bad movie. It was not a bad movie. Like I went and saw it twice, and people were cheering. People were enjoying themselves. Especially now, I think for me the funny part, the funniest one, the funniest part was when that pothead they were talking about Jason, and they were in the van getting away, and he was like that goalie was pissed about something.
Yeah, that was a good line. And I did like it, and it also one of the supporting cast. It was a young woman at the time. She's about our age, named Catherine Isabel, who, as it turns
Yeah,
out, is a very
Ginger
very
Snaps.
good actress.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ginger
that's where I
Snaps.
first saw her, was in Ginger Snaps, and then I saw her in this
Very
movie.
underrated actress.
I have
Never
seen
got the
her.
recognition she deserved.
Yeah, I have seen her do a dozen things now, and she is really good.
Yeah, she is. She's an outstanding actress.
Yeah. So she did some shit on Supernatural, I think, in season 2,
I think you're right.
which is funny because the chick who plays Bridget in Ginger Snaps is the crazy chick Becky who is in love with Sam for like 4 seasons.
Is she?
Yeah,
I thought she looked familiar.
yeah, that's
I
Bridget
was
from
like,
Ginger
where?
Snaps.
I only cared about Ginger Snaps because Catherine Isabel. I thought, like I said, I thought
Well,
her
see, that
acting
was
was
the first
outstanding.
thing I saw her in. I had no idea who she was at the time. I just thought it was a great fucking movie that takes, you know, female puberty and turns lycanthropy into an allegory for it.
Yeah, I was.
It's
To
it's
me, that
pretty
was a little.
graphic.
Yeah, to me, that was a little creepy. I was like, this chick looks like a freaking demon, and this dude's still trying to sex
Yeah.
with her. All right, with that on the number 5. Now here's one that it's not scary at all, but I had as a child. I think this was the movie. I laughed so hard that I wet my pants. I was laughing so hard. It's Return of the Living Dead.
Oh man, dude, that has one of all the shit about zombies saying brains comes from that
Yep,
movie.
from that movie. Yeah,
And it has one of the best zombie brains things I have ever seen. It's the originator of it, and it has one of the best scenes when so for those of you guys in the chat who don't know, it's a zombie apocalypse. It's kind of a ripoff of Night of the Living Dead, except the zombies can kind of talk a little bit, and it's goofy. And the whole thing's caused by a comet leaking radiation or some shit like that. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, so a bunch of people get locked up in this morgue trying to fight off the zombie apocalypse, and the cops show up because one of them thought to call 911, and of course the cops get eaten right immediately, and dispatch calls on their radio in the cop car, and it's like, hey, what's the situation? Over, come back, over. And one of the zombies grabs the thing, and he goes, send more cops. And they
yeah,
do.
yeah,
They do.
yeah. I thought it was paramedics. He was like, send more paramedics or send more something. I think you're right. But and remember the midget that was running after one of the cops. And he had like one arm, and he was like walking funny, so he was like skipping, trying to get. Oh man, that
So
was good.
is this on a list of the scariest movies? Because that movie wasn't scary, but it was a lot
Yes,
of
it
fun.
is.
There's nothing scary about that
There's
movie.
nothing scary about it, like I said. And now one Hellraiser is on this list. The next one is not scary either. It's the most disgusting, in my opinion, which is The Fly,
The 86 remake?
the
Because you're
1986 remake.
Yeah, because the original I think came out in '58 and co-starred Vincent Price, which is also very good, but is a very different movie.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's right up there with The Thing in terms of and to fair warning, if you have seen The Fly, then you have kind of an understanding of how the Thing's practical effects are going to go.
oh, yeah,
Excellent practical effects, but they are fucking gross.
yeah. And The Fly, I never made it all the way through that movie because I got so grossed out. I just couldn't finish.
Man, you didn't finish it? Holy shit,
I
man! It is
couldn't.
it's one of my favorite movies. I watch it in like the 1930 fucking year did Frankenstein come out? Anyway, when I get on like a mad scientist kick, that's one of the movies that I watch, um, and it gets really dark and very very tragic. I wouldn't even call it so much a horror movie as I would a. It's got a lot of body horror in it, but it's a tragedy,
Yeah.
almost like a Greek tragedy. And by the way, that's a David Cronenberg film.
Yeah, you can have that one. I mean, I know it's a classic, but it's a classic that I
Yeah, no,
and,
I'll
and
I'll
you
I'll
and
give
you
you
and
that.
you and you and you don't want to see the photo that they put on here because
It's
it's a photo of him showing how he eats as a fly.
oh, the vomit,
Yeah.
the enzyme. Yeah, 7-1. The Fly 2 is Fly 2 gets a bad rap, but I think it's actually pretty damn good, and it directly continues the story of the first one, which I loved about it. I actually have both of those movies on VHS. Yes, kids, I'm old.
Well, maybe you'll have this one on VHS, which comes in at number three, Evil Dead 2.
I have that one, I think, on Blu-ray somewhere. But yeah, I, Evil Dead 2 basically was a remake of Evil Dead 1, but they did it better,
Mhm.
and Ash wasn't quite as much of a little bitch as he was in the first movie.
Mm.
But I think Evil Dead 2, if you have to watch one of them, I'd say that's the one to go with. I mean, I love Army of Darkness too, but
Yeah.
it's just a better movie, better production value, better acting, better script. They redid a bunch of shit from the first movie, but they did it better, and they left out the rapey tree.
Good. I wouldn't even, speaking of Army of Darkness, I don't, because I've never considered that a scary movie. To me, it's an action fantasy movie. I've never considered it a horror movie.
Yes, Carrie, I have Blu-rays. After a while, they stopped making them in a format that I like, so I had to move on. But I'd never replaced any of my old stuff, and it still works. Um, Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, yeah,
Yeah.
it is, and I would argue that it's actually better than the remake they did with Will Smith, which is oh shit, now I can't remember. I Am
I
Legend.
you know I heard that Will Smith just signed he just signed up for another movie. It's called Slap.
I have no idea. It's like
It's
it's
sure to
Chris
win. It's
is
sure
Chris
to win
Rock
him the
co-starring.
Academy Award. Yeah, yeah. I think Chris Rock is his co-star.
Yeah, no, but yeah, the I Am Legend was a remake of
Last
Last
one I
Man on
heard.
Earth, and Vincent Price's version. Yeah, I agree 100%. Ozzy, it was a better movie.
Yeah, and he wasn't the last man on Earth. On top of that, so
Yeah.
here's number two. Now this one, I don't know if I'd give it number two, but it was scary, and that's a Child's Play.
The original? Shit, yeah, that
Yeah,
was a scary movie.
it was scary.
The first two were terrifying. The third one is still pretty creepy, and then they get into like the weird
It's
comedy
silly.
shit, which I don't mind. I actually like those movies a lot too, but it's a whole shift in genre almost.
It's a TV series now. I haven't watched it.
Yeah, yeah. I had a clerk at a convenience store the other day recommend that I watch the new one with Mark Hamill doing the voice instead of um, Greenland Wormtongue. What the hell is it? Brad Dourif? Uh, and I don't know if I can get into it because the whole thing is basically it's not possessed. There's no voodoo involved. He's not a serial killer. It was a factory default setting that a disgruntled employee like reset on a machine.
That's stupid.
Yes, it is. It's very stupid.
So he's just a machine. So it's just a program.
Yeah, yeah. He's like a highly advanced Teddy Ruxpin. For those of you who were not born in the 70s or 80s, Teddy Ruxpin was a popular children's toy at the time.
I
He could,
hated him even as a kid. I couldn't stand Teddy Ruxpin.
yeah, it was a creepy little fucker, wasn't he? He was like the
Yeah, he was.
precursor to the Furbies.
Yeah, I was like, man, Teddy Cuxpin. Here's number one, and it's mandatory movie. No, oh no, no, it's not. Pet Cemetery.
See, I don't like that one. I never did. Something about that movie always just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I couldn't tell you exactly what it is. Probably it has a lot to do with the way Gage dies in it, but yeah, just I never really cared much for that one. But I wouldn't call that scary so much as deeply unsettling.
Yeah, yeah. like the Blair Witch Project. When that came out, the first one I watched it, it wasn't scary, but it just it 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 put me in a weird mood for
Yeah.
about a day and a half. It just disturbed. It really disturbed me.
Yeah. Yeah, Carrie. No shit. That movie went to some like supernatural shit aside. There's a lot of really disturbing fucking choices made by the parents in that movie.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's
think he did voice the Joker. I didn't know he voiced the Hobgoblin though.
Yeah, he did. Did Joker? He did Hobgoblin. He did a bunch of different things. He also was in the Guyver.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it was one of the Stephen King books that I didn't enjoy either. But I don't doubt that it was better than the movie. It typically is, especially with King, especially with him. Most of the time, the movies suck ass. Not all of them, but most of them do. Oh, yep, Ozzy. I actually have that entire collection on DVD. He reprises that role as the trickster actually in the more recent Flash TV series. I think it's season 1, maybe it's 2, but it's pretty early on before the whole thing goes to shit. So, by the way, Kohai, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We are discussing horror movies.
Go
I'm sure you
high.
picked that up. So, but yeah, that like, I don't, so is this listed in order of scariness?
It's supposed to be. The next list is even longer now. The next list is the the top 50 scariest of the 90s, and then
50?
yeah, I'm not going through that whole list. And then there's another one, and that's the one from this year. And then there's another one of the top 15 for the 1990s, and that's 2017. Um, but I definitely, I'm not. I'm looking at the one for from 2017, and
So Hellraiser's not
no,
on any of these?
no. I mean,
It
listen,
doesn't surprise
look,
me, it
look,
really.
help, look for the top 15. Hellraiser's not on there, but Sleepy Hollow is.
What?
Hellraiser's not on there, but Jacob's
Sleepy
Ladder
Hollow is a
is. The
fucking
Craft is
Tim
on here.
Burton movie.
Yeah, The
Oh,
Craft is on here. Cure, Candyman,
Candyman was Candyman is another Clive
yeah,
Barker property, actually. Same guy created that and Hellraiser.
The Witches, Scream, Ringu.
The Witches?
Yep,
Is in the one
Ringu.
that's based on the Roald Dahl book?
Yep, The Bear Wolf Project, Army of
Blair Witch
Darkness
Project
is on
was
it.
fucking Blair Witch Project was fucking boring. Uh,
But
um,
yeah,
I am shocked at some of these choices. You can
yeah,
tell these are
the
these are
top the top 50. Number 50 is Scream 2. Scream 2 was good, but
It
it
was good, but
definitely
the first one was had more in the way of like effective jump scares, I think.
yeah. Check this out. Number 43. And keep in mind this is the best horror movies. I wouldn't even call it horror. Interview with the Vampire is on this list.
It is a horror movie, but I wouldn't call it a scary
That's
movie.
scary though. Arachnophobia is on it.
Because
John Carpenter's Vampires.
you got to take into account that there are different kinds of horror,
Yeah.
and different results you're looking to achieve. Like there's the gross out body horror, there's psychological horror, cosmic horror is my favorite. Excuse me. Um, and all kinds of different stuff. And you can mix and match genres and all that stuff. Horror is one of those things you can just do a lot of stuff with. But if we're going strictly from like a scare factor, like makes me jump, kind of shit, like none of those things do it. Maybe arachnophobia.
Yeah, Arachnophobia is on that list. And Arachnophobia was a great movie.
Oh yeah, that was a really great movie. So, but
I gained a
yeah.
whole new respect for
Oh,
spiders after that.
hold on. What do you mean Sleepy Hollow belongs on the list? It's not a horror movie. Horrific shit
Well,
happens in it, but it's not a horror movie. I mean, now the story, I will grant you, is a great ghost story, and I would put that story on the list. But that version of it, I don't know, man.
I mean, it wasn't like a funny campy, You could tell that someone was trying to make it legitimately a scary movie. You know,
I will
well, it was number 43.
I will give you this on a certain level. I think that that movie was pretty good. I enjoyed some of those books, but Anne Rice took what Bram Stoker started with Dracula, making vampires like sexy and shit, and she
Mhm.
ran with it. And it's because of her that fucking Twilight exists,
Yeah.
which
And,
is garbage, garbage movies.
and Interview with the Vampire is now a weekly show. Nope, Ozzy, Sweeney Todd is not on the list.
Sweeney Todd, I again, I wouldn't call that necessarily horror. It's more Grand Guignol, but again, different people's taste, right? Um, 7-1, cosmic and body horror are probably my favorite too. Cosmic body horror is pretty easy to do though. Cosmic horror is very, very difficult to translate on the screen. That's why there are so few that are any good. Um, and since we're all here talking about the subject, I'm going to give you guys some recommendations on that front. Number one, The Thing, In the Mouth of Madness. To a lesser degree, Ozzy, sorry, I don't really like Prince of Darkness, but it does include some of that, and it is done well. Um, there's a movie called The Endless that was a little independent flick, came out a few years ago. That one is done very well. I like that one quite a bit. And actually, the chick from Twilight, what the hell's her name? The girl, I cannot remember her
The
name.
one that played Bella.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm
she
not
was
not a fan.
she was in a movie. I'm generally not either because she's kind of a wooden actress. She's not very engaging and she's not very interesting to
No,
watch. She did a
no.
movie called Underwater a couple of years ago that qualifies as cosmic horror. It's not scary, but it does have some things in common, including an appearance by a certain squid faced monstrosity from beyond the stars. Um, and she was actually pretty damn good in it. I was very surprised. I really liked Underwater quite a bit. Um, I would throw in maybe not Color Out of Space with Nick Cage. I enjoyed the movie, but it wasn't fantastic or anything. There was a lot of Nick Cage being Nick Cage in it.
Mhm.
Um, there's one called The Void that is very good. It's a little bit low budget and it takes place in a smaller area, but
I think
the
I've seen
practical
that one.
effects. The practical effects in that one alone are actually quite good, and it incorporates the tentacle monstrosities, it incorporates madness, it incorporates weird faceless cults, it incorporates doorways to places beyond. I mean, they actually did a really good one. It's called The Void. Check it out, guys.
I think I've seen that one.
Yeah. I would even put what? Oh yeah, yeah. Annihilation's definitely on that list. Annihilation is one of those movies that achieves that lingering sense of like existential dread that you really want from your cosmic horror, which is one of the reasons it's so difficult to do. Um, because that movie stays with you. Which by the way, Annihilation it really is very, very close to the Lovecraft story, The Color Out of Space. It's probably one of the best film versions of that story. I think it was, in fact, inspired by it. Yes, Ozzy, Kristen Stewart, thank you. Uh, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there are some good ones out there. I would even call Cabin in the Woods cosmic horror to a point.
You know which movie I saw? I saw it a few years ago. Um, it's called Siren, and I know there's two different movies with that title, and it's the one from 2016. There was a movie called Siren that came out years ago, uh, and from what I remember the ending was scary as heck because you don't actually see you see the results of what the siren did, like the killing and all that stuff. But when that
I don't.
siren shows up at the very end,
It's about a siren like the beautiful ladies who lured sailors to the rocks with their voices,
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah, but there was
I don't
nothing
think I've seen
beautiful.
that.
Yeah, there was nothing beautiful about her when she showed up. Either one of them, because the 2016 version, that siren is actually a demon. The one I saw years ago, it was a siren from the sea and whatnot, but the way that they made her look, I mean, it was scary as heck. I mean, and you don't see her because you didn't nobody knew who she was, which one she was. But when she showed up at the I'm talking the very end, and it caught me off guard too because I was doing stuff. I wasn't home alone. My sisters and stuff, everybody was doing something, and I just turned and just happened to see it because I was watching the movie, but I wasn't paying attention towards the end, and I didn't realize it was the end. And I turned right when she showed up out of nowhere, and I was just like, "Oh!" I mean, I jumped out of my seat. And the 2016 one, trust me, you'll jump out of your seat because when they show her face, I was like, "Oh!" I was like, "Dang!" Like she got hit with the ugly tree, not the stick, the whole tree. Like somebody pulled the tree out, stumped, roots and all, and smacked her with it. But it's for what it is. It's a decent movie.
I'm going to check that out. Sometimes the independent ones are the best ones because
Yeah.
it allows them a lot more freedom to. Obviously, there are budget concerns if you're one of those guys who really loves special effects and shit. But I'll take story and character over that any day.
Mhm.
If they can draw me in with the story, the special effects, I won't even notice them if they're bad.
Have you heard of
But
an independent short movie called VHS?
yeah, haven't
Okay,
seen it, but I've heard of it.
okay. The siren, the character that's in the 2016 character, that is the character that's in VHS. It's her.
Huh.
It's before. So at some point, somehow she gets captured in Siren, but VHS that's her character. I think before she gets captured.
Hmm. I might check that out then. Before we move too further in, Kohai, that movie came out at the exact right time to be the perfect rebuttal and answer to fucking Twilight. Everything about the vampires in 30 Days of Night was perfectly done to cast aspersions. Very, very good movie. Based on a comic series, it's quite good too, actually. But the thing I liked most about it is that the vampires themselves were brutal, they were feral, they weren't clean or pretty, and they weren't interested in making more of themselves. They just ate everybody. It was fucking awesome. Yes. I don't know about gay. I would say definitely necrophilia and bestiality. I mean, if you think about it, it's the whole story is basically an underage girl deciding whether she wants to fuck her dog or a corpse.
Ugh.
You know, I mean, let's be honest. Twilight is a sick fantasy.
Yeah.
Um, so inflicted, huh? Is that inflicted? Is the title, Ozzy? Because I might check that out. I tend to seek out cosmic horror type movies, and there are a lot of really bad ones too. Primarily because as we discussed, the the concepts in that are typically philosophical in nature and very difficult to represent on screen. You know, um, but yeah, I'll look for that if inflicted is in fact the title. Um, they are difficult to make though. There's a great many that are just not good. um, they're just not. So, do not remember the title. Okay. I mean, sure. I don't. You know, Carrie, I was going to try really hard to get through this stream without talking about butt sex, unlike the last time.
Yeah, yeah. I've been keeping a conscious effort away from that.
and here we are.
The only good thing to come out of Twilight was 50 Shades of Grey.
That wasn't good. That was worse. there was no justice. I mean, because then it was just two fucked up human beings.
No, Carrie, I'm not happy.
That was, I mean, I agree. Yeah, the 50 Shades was fan fiction of Twilight, which is, I mean, oh, yeah, nothing good about that. Yeah, well, that's because it's porn for them. Porn for women tends to be prose as opposed to pictures. That's just the way it is. I mean, that's why Fabio sold so many fucking books in supermarkets across the U.S. for decades. You know,
I think his sales went down when he went to the amusement park and got smacked in the face with that bird when he was on the roller coaster. They busted his nose. I think like a pigeon or something flew, hit him right square in the nose while the ride was going on.
yeah.
You didn't hear
So,
about
well,
that?
no, I didn't, but I haven't, paid any attention to Fabio for decades because he got too old. They can't put him on covers now. You know?
Yeah, he's 63.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, here it is. Never forget the day, and this is a article, 2018 article from Esquire. Never forget the day Fabio killed a bird with his face and changed the world. I didn't know the bird died.
That's actually funny.
19 years ago, it's March 30th. 19 years ago today, everything changed. For those of us who came of age in the late 1990s, it was our shot heard around the world. Our day the music died. Our secret hand job at the first Lollapalooza.
Oh boy.
I'm not even going to read the rest of this. But I didn't know that the bird died. Because when Fabio got off the ride, like his nose was just busted open.
Well, her bird hit him pretty hard. I mean, that connect. I imagine his nose was pretty busted, but his skull probably outweighs that whole bird's body, and they have hollow bones, so of course it died.
Yeah, they said the bird was 10 pounds.
Never mind then. I
It
guess maybe it's
says
pretty close.
the bird weighed 10 pounds.
Wait, a
And
pigeon weighed 10 pounds? That's a fat fucking pigeon.
I don't think it might not have been a pigeon. I can't remember what kind of bird it was, but it says, of course, nobody counts a 10-pound flying obstacle getting in the way of someone's face during this drop. It was during a drop. That's right. It
Also,
was it was while the ride was going down the drop, and he was going 73 miles an hour. So imagine you're going 73 miles an hour, and you collide face first with something that weighs 10 pounds. That's no wonder his face looked the way it looked. But for it to be a 10-pound bird, that couldn't have been a pigeon.
yeah, better a broken nose than a bird going all the way through your head too. I mean, then you could be called featherbrain, but you wouldn't know because you'd also be dead on account of,
Oh, okay. They say no wonder it was a goose that hit him.
ow. He should be kind of dead. I guess lucky him. you know,
Yeah,
that's
that's
that
true. Seven better
that would
broken
hurt.
nose than an eye. But yeah, a goose hit him. He's lucky that's all that happened.
Yeah.
It's 10 pounds to the face at 73 miles an hour. Think about it. A baseball weighs less than that, and you get hit in the head like that, and it can kill you.
hmm
He's
Well, that's
lucky to be
also
alive.
that's also why the bird died. It took a full size Fabio to the body at that speed. I mean, the kinetic energy goes both ways.
Yeah. Yeah,
Probably.
that's the what the difference in mass. So that's why the bird died.
Yeah.
But I mean, but dang man, I
Yeah.
mean,
His
it should
That
have been
goose was cooked.
a pyrrhic victory for Fabio's face though, man. I mean, that's 10 pounds is 10 pounds, regardless. Like he should be all that
God,
muscle he got. I guess maybe I guess all those chin ups he was probably doing worked.
I'd almost rather hit a wall than a bird. I mean, because what if it doesn't die and it's just like stuck to your face,
I
injured
know, huh?
but not dead, struggling? You know, at least the wall has the decency to just kill you outright.
Yeah.
You know? Oh man, that's yeah. Why are we talking about Fabio? The guy hasn't been relevant in forever.
I know.
I'm sure he's doing very well. He made a lot of money off of selling his likeness. He's probably still getting residuals, um, but you know, and I'm sure that takes some of the sting out of a fucking 10-pound goose slamming into his face. God damn.
That's
Some
crazy.
of this thing, mind you, not all of this thing. Oh,
So I heard, speaking of not a scary movie, but kind of around the horror genre, I read earlier that the new Blade reboot is in development trouble because not only is the new guy that's playing Marsala, I think it was Marsala Ali, guy that's playing Blade.
yeah, he was he played
He's been in a lot of
Diamondback.
movies.
I think he played Diamondback in the first half of the first season of Luke Cage too, and
Yeah,
he's
he did.
probably the best part of that entire series.
Yeah. Um, but he is upset because the writer basically so far with the script, I think they said that so far it's 90 pages and not one action scene is in it.
Mm.
So he's mad. And
There
then
there are two action scenes in it, but those weren't done up by the writer. That's
uh,
because they make these things um, like by an assembly line. There are two, but they're not supposed to be very good, and mostly it's going to be like dialogue, people talking in hallways about their feelings and
yeah.
shit.
Well, in any event, apparently from the story that I read, they were saying that at this point there was no action. There was no action being filmed at all. And Marcella got upset, and apparently the director got upset, and so he quit and walked out.
Yeah, I'd heard that this morning too. Good for him. You know, he doesn't need to be part of that fucking machine.
Speaking of that,
Yeah.
and this is going all the way out of the horror genre. So the Woman King.
Dude, I have done my level best not to have to weigh in on this shit. For a week now, I have been managed to avoid talking about it to anybody.
Well, I'm sure you've heard. I'm sure you've heard about the backlash that's going on right now.
Yeah,
Everybody's
I
mad
hear
about it.
everything, man. I just have been trying to stay out of it.
Well, everybody's like, well, I can, I can, I can say something.
I can too. I just have been not doing that. You know?
Well, we could, you know what we could do is we could leave it alone and just blame everything and just blame everything that has to do with that movie on Carrie. We'll just blame
Carrie.
Carrie for that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I suppose, but
I mean, it's not mandatory that we blame Carrie, but you know,
really, dude.
yeah, really.
Carrie, he just turned your name into a pun.
But I will just say this for you guys. I mean, look, I don't think any of us here has any interest in watching that movie, but I think it's funny. I think it's funny that people are starting to actually pay attention to the garbage that's being put out, you know, and
Yeah. Well, you know, it was this is along the lines of all the hype that was up around Black Panther 2 when that came out. That movie is at best a 6 out of 10, at best. The main character was shoved off to the side. A bunch of other people took center stage. Hell, he was unconscious for like a third of it. Um, you know, which is a shame because you know, I'm sure you guys all saw Civil War, right? He
mhm,
was great in that. You know, and he was good. He was good every time he was on screen. They just didn't give him a lot of screen time in a movie that bore the name of his character, which made no sense to me. I mean, there were some things I liked about it, but there was also like a really shitty CGI fight at the end of the movie that was just hard to watch. Kind of made my eyes feel like they were bleeding, um, and all that. But it wasn't about the quality of the movie. It was about the hype. It was about the quote unquote cultural moment. Uh, and they're trying to do the same thing with the Woman King. I mean,
they messed up.
maybe don't pick a fucking pack of slavers to do it with.
Yeah, and I didn't know until earlier that the director who also wrote it is a white lady?
Yeah,
Ap-
actually, I think
Apparently,
there were 4 writers, and they're all white women.
yeah. And apparently, I guess I don't know. I don't know how they did their research, but um, and the funny thing is that the lead character, that character was supposed to go to the lady that played the Black Panther's girlfriend in Black Panther,
Oh yeah,
Lupita. Lupita, I can't
Nyong'o.
pronounce her last name.
I think it's Nyong'o,
Yeah,
something
but
like that. Yeah, she's
she
really good too.
apparently what happened with her is she considered the part, and then she did her research and actually, I guess, spoke to some people whose ancestors were victims of that tribe, and then she called them back and was like, "Nope, I'm not doing it."
Yeah, good for her.
That main character, from what I found out, that main character doesn't even exist. That character never existed. So they manufactured a character and then
Yeah. Well,
and then made this tribe look like something that they weren't,
that's
and
that's
got
because
caught.
they're trying to rewrite history, man. The problem is like it doesn't matter how you spin this shit. They still captured and sold a bunch of. They used to celebrate fucking coronations by decapitating 100 fucking slaves.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, they did. They were one of the most brutal slaving nations in history. Even before the Europeans got there, they were doing this shit for like hundreds of years. You know,
Yeah, it was the British that stopped them. The British put a blockade up to stop them from, because they were
yeah.
still trying to continue the slave trade.
I mean, even the Aztecs, at least they doped you up so you couldn't feel anything before they cut your heart out while you were still living. These guys would just hack you to pieces.
I guess they didn't have time to wait.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know, but no, good for her. Lupita, again, last name. I'm not going to probably pronounce it right. I think it's Nyong'o, but she's a hell of an actress too. She
Yeah,
could do better. You know.
and she was smart to avoid. She was smart to avoid that movie like the plague,
Oh yeah.
because everybody's crapping on that movie. I mean, from every race community you could think of, everybody.
I know you're not on Twitter, man, but Black Twitter exploded.
Oh, they did.
It was
They were
brutal. They
so
tore that movie to pieces.
mad.
It was kind of
They tore it up on Lapeef last night. Lapeef.
yeah. I see. Yeah, yeah, they did a little bit. I think I might have ducked out by then because
Oh, it
I
was
had to take
funny
care of
because
some house. But
because they were going off about it, and then all of a sudden they stop and they go, "What do you think, Amira?"
yeah,
She's looking like a deer in the headlights. You can tell she's like,
she's like, my people still practice chattel slavery.
she was she was like, you know what they did,
Yeah.
with this movie was disrespectful and it was wrong.
Yeah. The Woman King, Carrie. Which, by the way, that very title is intersectional feminist bullshit.
Exactly.
That very title,
And
because
that's what they said last night on
yeah,
Lapeef.
it downplays the role of a queen. It says that a queen is not as powerful as a king. Like that, which is horseshit, right? But by definition, those are gendered terms, and a woman cannot be king any more than a man can be a queen.
Right.
It's not how it works. And all that shit is just to be like, oh well, women can be kings too. No, you fucking can't. No
Yeah.
offense, but you can't any more than say I could be a queen. Now, obviously, if I were inclined, I could be a drag queen, but that's not the same thing. I couldn't go and like take Elizabeth's job, for example. Although arguably Chuck is more of a queen than a king.
Yeah.
For our British folks out there, I apologize. I just insulted your royalty, but
Well,
Chuck is douche. Fuck him.
he just he's been messing with he's been picking on Carrie and Megan, and now he's got some good ideas because the Queen of Denmark just snatched the titles from like 4 of her grandchildren,
Yeah,
and then she said, "Oh, it'll be good for them in the long run."
I probably will.
They didn't
But
see it that way.
well, of course they didn't see it that way. But
Their parents didn't either. They were like, "Well, why don't you
what's
Basically, why don't you let us be the judge of that? Like, why are you only doing it to them?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you add yourself to that list since you think it's so good?
I don't
And,
know,
and
man.
the first thing I saw in the article was they were like, "Uh oh, somebody this lady's giving King Charles some ideas. Just
Yeah.
just inherit everybody, right?"
Yeah. I don't know, but I mean, I
But
think
you technically can't, right? I mean, because it's a different setup in England, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that by law, the power passes to the next oldest and closest relative um, when he kicks or whatever. Uh, in England, yes, but that only holds true so long as the Windsors hold power. If another family comes to power, for example, um, which is kind of historically just what happens in England. The Windsors have only been in power for like 100 and some odd years. You know, um, then whoever sits on the throne, yeah, it's hereditary, and there's not much I can do about that. That's how the law's set up, but it doesn't necessarily have to remain that family.
Well, how are they going to get rid? I mean, how do you get rid of
Historically,
it?
they get conquered.
Yeah.
You know, historically, that's what happened.
Well, I don't know how that's going to happen today, but
Well, these days they probably do it with, you know, um, some kind of like sneaky marriage clause or something like that. There'd probably be a lot less bloodshed, just court stuff would be my guess.
Carrie,
Um,
who's a drag queen?
oh, he's calling me that. That's why I ignored that. By the way, Bernie, welcome. Uh,
I'm like, wait a minute, who's he calling a drag queen?
oh no, it's me. It's me. Even though I'm not the one who turned his fucking name into a pun, it's me. So, yeah, the queen sucks.
I ain't no drag queen.
Drag queen my nuts. Uh,
Drag queen.
so, yeah, we kind of got off on the horror topic a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
Did you? We
I
were
have no
before.
problems getting back on it though.
What's that?
I have no problems getting back on it.
No, no, not at all. I was just kind of redirecting a little bit there. Were we going to go through the shorter list?
Do you want to?
Are you sure?
Okay. 15 best horror movies of the 1990s. Number 15, Army of Darkness.
Not a horror movie, but okay.
That's what I said.
I mean, it's a comedy, man. It's a horror comedy, maybe, but it's a comedy.
Have you played the PC game that came out earlier this year
No,
of the Evil Dead?
I'm not a
It
PC gamer, man.
Man, that game will change your mind. It's creepy. It's a group type of game. You can play it by yourself, but that game's creepy. It, that game is creepy, and those Deadites do not play. They do not play.
Yeah,
They
kind of.
don't play at all. They get on you real quick, and getting rid of them is not easy either. So it's best to not play it alone. But just the atmosphere and everything, it's creepy. Uh, and I think it's independently made at that.
Well, you just have to remember the three words, man. Klaatu, Verata,
Yeah, for real, huh? And the cure word for it is groovy.
Yeah, nice.
All right, so number 14 is your favorite, The Blair Witch Project, which I strongly disagree with that. All the movies in the 90s, this movie shouldn't even be on the list.
The Blair Witch Project was boring. I'm sorry, guys,
Boring
but
as
it
heck.
was. It was boring. All right, let me qualify that. The first time I saw it, it scared the hell out of me. But I will tell you why. Had nothing to do with the movie because I've watched it a bunch of times since. There's nothing scary about it. It's because where it was filmed was very, very similar to a place that was just outside of where the theater I saw it at was, and I went there with a couple of young lesbians, and we all got stoned as shit beforehand and convinced ourselves that after this movie we're going to go climb a mountain that looked like where they filmed that at.
Why would you do that? Or you're
Because
high.
we were stoned.
Yeah.
Why does anybody do anything when they're stoned? Uh, so, uh, so we watched the movie, and of course, the whole time we're psyching ourselves up, and we're really high. Like I had spent 50 miles traveling with the one to go see the other in another town, and we were smoking weed the whole way there. We smoked some more when we got there. We smoked some more in the parking lot of the movie. Went to see the movie. Went out, smoked some
Smoked it while
more.
you were sleeping.
Scared ourselves so much that instead of going up the mountain like we had planned, we just went back to their place and watched Bound with Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly.
That was probably the better thing to do
Yeah, yeah, it
because
was.
you would have been in the Blair Witch Part 3.
Yeah, but now that seeing it again many times, sober, drunk, whatever, and it's just boring. You know what the best part of that whole fucking movie is?
The ending, the
No,
credits.
after they no, because you're still left with that shitty taste in your mouth.
Yeah, true.
But after the one guy gets mad at and throws the map in the river, and they just lose the river, and so they're just like, well, let's just pick a direction. I'll go south, and then they come to the fucking part where they can't go any further, and like, well, south didn't work out. I laughed so fucking hard.
Well, yeah, because it's like a moment of despair.
Yeah.
It's like, what do we do
I
now?
mean, I know it was supposed to be a moment of despair, but it came off as like startlingly funny to me. The rest of that movie, I just like whatever. But and then the ending of it just, man, the ending makes no fucking sense.
It didn't to me until I read up on it. I mean, it was like I guess the Blair Witch makes you stand in the corner because she doesn't want you looking at her. But the weird thing is that she only attacks if you look at her. The girl was hit from behind.
Yeah, yeah, because she was looking at her friend who was standing in the corner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible that she didn't die there. She was knocked out and then stood in the corner and like came to later. Maybe
Maybe.
that's what happened to her friend. We don't know. They don't explain that shit. And I don't have a problem with like an open ending like that. I just think that particular one was fucking stupid. No, never watched the sequel. I know there's at least one.
Yeah.
So
And I think and there's another one too. There's another sequel because I remember seeing a sequel, and in that sequel, this girl shows up, and this is years later. Um, so the whole thing with one and two had already happened. But this one actually showed the Blair Witch. It actually showed her. Like the girl actually saw her in the woods stalking her. And then the girl goes into the house and she sees her in the house.
yeah, yeah. There is a sequel. I never watched it, so I couldn't tell you anything about it, man.
Yeah. Um,
What do we got?
Now here's the thing about that movie. And I see why it made the list, and then I'll move on. It cost them $60,000 to make that movie.
Yeah, it was cheap
It
as
made
shit.
$248 million.
Yeah, they did. They made. I mean, as far as like business moves go and like trying to make money in the movie
Smart.
industry goes, yeah, it was extremely smart. Filmmakers did a great job selling it. They even kept, I think, the actors basically hidden from sight, and claimed that they were really dead until like one of them showed up at a coffee shop in Boston or something. But this was like well after they'd already made a bunch of money on it.
Yeah.
So,
Uh, Number 13, Ringu. I never watched the Japanese version.
um, yeah. So I watched the Japanese version a long time ago, but I don't remember it that well. I have seen the American version a bunch more times than I have the Japanese one. I do remember that one pretty well. Also, I had a thing for Naomi Watts for a while,
Yeah.
but I did see it. I don't recall it as well. I I get it mixed up in my head with Ju-on,
Mm.
and because they were made by the same people, and which is another thing. Like I've seen The Grudge and The Grudge 2, the American versions, and I've seen Ju-on and Ju-on 2. I have not seen Ju-on 3. Apparently, everything makes sense at the end of that one. I haven't seen that. So like by the time I got to the second one, I'm just like, what the fuck? None of this makes any sense. you know. So, but no, I did see Ringu. I just don't recall it very well.
Yeah, I never saw it. So, but I think I saw the American version of The Ring. I wasn't impressed with it. Now the Grudge is I kind of I like the franchise.
I do too, but it suffers from the same problem that the Japanese movies do without that third one that tie everything together. Like by the end of the second one, nothing makes any sense.
Well, it did, but I had to go back and like read about it to put things together. I mean, I kind of caught on to it when I was watching the movie, but then when I read up on it, then everything made sense because it kind of it hops around.
I kind of get you there, but here's my problem with that is that you shouldn't have to do homework
Yeah,
to get the movie.
that's true.
Like
True.
outside homework, you shouldn't have to. That's one of the problems that I've had with the latest of the MCU and having to watch. If you want to understand everything that's going on, you got to watch all the series, you got to read all the pamphlets, you got to watch all the movies. Otherwise,
In
you're
other
going to
words,
miss
you got to
something
spend all the
important.
movie. I mean, you
Yeah,
got to spend all the money.
right. But you shouldn't have to. The movies should stand alone. They should be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and they don't. So that's my issue with that is that you should not have to do outside homework. I have no problem if somebody wants to do that. That's fine. I just think that for your casual viewer, I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to lose out on money that way because you're going to have a bunch of people going like, "What the fuck did I watch this for?"
What I didn't like about it was it never tells you how
Yeah.
to stop the curse
Yeah.
from
Good night,
spreading.
Carrie. We'll hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. But yeah, it never tells you how to stop the curse from from spreading. It just continues to go from one person. So I
Right.
get what you're saying. It kind of it left some
Yeah. Well, and the time jumps were weird.
yeah, they were.
They were
and
very
and that's what
strangely
threw
handled.
and that's what threw a lot of people off.
Yeah. Because like you get all the shit with in the American versions, like with Bill Pullman and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of stuff happens with him later in the movie, and you're just like, wait, didn't he kill himself in the first
Did
scene?
he? Yes.
Like
That's
what
how I
the
thought. I
fuck?
was like, wait a minute. I had to do a double take. I was like, wait a minute.
Well, they don't do anything to differentiate between time periods. You just expected to understand that this is a different time period. Which is again, it's fine. I don't have an issue with their filmmaking. I just found that it was a little bit hard to keep track of. If you guys will give me just 1 second, Larry, you want to talk to the chat? I will be right back.
All right. Oh, guys, I guess it's just us. Good night, Carrie, if you're hearing this. Bernie, you sued the Blair Witch Company for making me sick in the theater. Well, you know what? I'll tell you guys this. Since Bernie B's talking about a movie theater, there's a good friend of mine that in my opinion, he should have sued the theater. But there's a movie he was watching. It was Starship Troopers, and not only he hated. Well, Seven, my day was good. My day was pretty good. But let me not get off. Not let me get off track. Um, but he was watching Starship Troopers, and he gets up and goes out into the lobby because he's bored out of his mind. He goes out to the lobby and he's wondering why people are just walking out. The workers are walking out, everybody's walking out. So he goes all the way out of the hallway. The theater is on fire. And no one bothered to go into the theater rooms and tell everybody that that the theater was on fire. They had set the popcorn machine on fire. And instead of the workers going into the theater rooms, shutting the movies off and telling everybody, hey, evacuate, theater's on fire. They just took off and left everybody in there. Theater's on fire. He can't even. He couldn't even get out to the front because the whole front area is on fire. So
What
he
theater?
has to. Hmm?
What theater?
It was it was a theater that was owned by Magic Johnson, believe it or not, in Los Angeles. The theater was on fire, and they did not tell anybody.
That's well, I mean, it is illegal to shout fire in a crowded theater.
Yeah, that's why I was laughing, but the theater was on fire.
Now, to be fair, it's only illegal to do that if there's no fire. If there's an actual fire, you don't shout it, obviously, because you want to avoid a panic and people getting trampled, but you do let them know.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta say something, but they didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And that theater, the theater shut down, and if I'm not mistaken, he sold it. He sold it, and I forget what they turned the theater into, but then it got sold again and it turned into a Cinemark. But yeah, I just remember the look on his face because when he told me it was years later, and just you could see how mad he was, and I said, why did you sue the theater? The theater was on freaking fire, dude. And he was like, come on, man, Magic owns the theater. I'm like that doesn't mean anything, man. Like, dude, you almost got burned alive.
Yeah.
One of these costs the extra quarter out, but yeah, in that theater. But yeah, you know what? Yeah, I personally think Magic had to know there was some kind of liability coming. He couldn't get rid of that theater fast enough when that happened.
Yeah. All right. Whereabouts were we at?
We are at number 12, Scream. The first one.
Okay, I'll give you that. Scream
Yeah.
is a solid slasher flick, and it
Yeah,
also managed to be very tongue in cheek about everything.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. I enjoyed that. You know, there is another Scream coming out. It is in the works as we speak.
Huh.
I'm not sure if they started shooting yet, but I do know that there was there was uh, a battle going over I can't believe it. How can I forget this? There was a battle going on over salary. The studio got into it with Nev Campbell, and Nev Campbell was like, "Oh, so if you're not gonna pay me what I deserve, you know, because apparently she wasn't getting much. You know, she really wasn't getting what I personally thought she was getting for those movies, and she wasn't. And she walked, and I guess maybe they were bluffing, and she called their bluff, and she was like, nope, and she walked out, she left, and they caved in and gave her what she wanted. My thing about that is, Scream is one of those. It's one of those franchises, and don't get me wrong, like I love me some Sidney Prescott, you know, Gail Weathers, and all that, but it is a franchise that you could come up with a new cast of characters each time, never have the originals in it, and if you have the right people there, it still works. It still works.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I considered Sydney's story basically over by 3, even though they did another one with her. Um, you know, like at that point, it was probably time to move on
Yeah,
to new characters or whatever, or maybe just stop making those fucking movies. Um,
yeah, but
you know, the problem with all horror franchises, particularly slasher franchises, is that they do wear thin because the production value goes down with each sequel,
yeah,
and the quality of the writing goes down with each sequel.
yeah. Now the last one, like the one that came out earlier this year, which is on Paramount Plus, by the way, the one that came out earlier this year, I within the first 5 minutes, I knew how can I say I would say the first because it switches scenes, you know. Um, But I would say within the first 2 minutes, in fact, within the first 2 minutes, I knew who one of the killers was. And then when it switched to the next scene, I knew immediately who the second killer was. And I was with a friend of mine, and I even told him, I said, "Watch, it's this person and it's this person." And he said, "No way." And sure enough, I was right.
Mhm.
Because you watch the formula, you watch these type of movies enough times, and you figure out real quick who it is, because I'm a big fan of the Scream franchise. And so I was like, it's gonna be, the people that you would least expect. you know I knew one of the characters had to be somebody that was nowhere near the first attack. you know and the next scene, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but the next scene, scenes going on, I was like, it's this person, because that person was so far away that I was like, yeah, because this person is too far away. And since Scream, normally the killers work in pairs, one of them didn't have to be there. I just didn't know why this person would tie them in. And then it makes, of course, the story came out in the end, but for what it was, I thought it was decent. I liked the one prior to it a bit more. Maybe because Hayden Panettiere was in it. I don't know. But
Yeah, save the cheerleader, save the world.
yeah, well, she's going through it right now, man. I mean, her ex is Vladimir Klitschko, and he's over there in the Ukraine, and he tricked her into sending her daughter over there for a visit, and he never sent her back.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that, man. I don't follow a lot of celebrity lives, so I
Right.
no
Well, I
idea
only
about that
know
one.
about it because I was, researching my
Yeah,
my weekly list, and it was splattered on the front page of one of the news sites. So apparently she even went on Jada Pinkett Smith's thing. So she's making a big uproar about this right now, which I understand, it's your kid, but this guy has had your daughter for, I think it's been more than a year.
hmm,
So I was like, why now? But then and also at the same time, um, apparently she had a problem with alcohol and stuff like that, which is why he managed to get their daughter from her in the first place. So I understand
yeah,
that. But at some point, dude, like you're sitting in the middle of a war zone. Why is your daughter not on a plane? If, he's famous, so I'm sure he's got some means to get her back.
hmm.
Um, and I could be wrong, but I digress. Um,
Bernie, I actually like those movies, and I do have obviously issues with the guy who created that series. He also did another great movie called Powder, but there's a lot of subtext in those movies too, and the man is a convicted pedophile. Um, and yeah, it's a whole thing. I'm not going to say his name right now. As a concept goes, though, the creeper is a great character. I didn't see three. I had some issues with two. I thought they did some cool stuff, but some of it was kind of yeah. Um, yeah. So, but I haven't seen three. I did. I think the first one is actually a very good horror movie, though.
I saw three, and then I
Yeah, how was
quickly
it?
forgot about it.
Well, that answers that question.
And that was just for me. There's a new one coming out, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. There's a I forget the subtitle of that one, but yeah, there is a new one come. There's a new one announced. I have no idea if it's actually
Yeah.
going to come out or not.
I like the first one, and I like the first and the second one. Bernie, it is a great series. Um, and the funny thing is, and that's not on the list, but it's a 2000s movie, so
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of shit that a great shit that I think isn't on these lists.
mhm.
So, what was next? Hey, Keela, welcome. Discussing
Oh,
horror movies. How you doing?
oh snap! Killer, there's no undead strippers or anything on this list. So
There is,
um,
however, a Robert Englund movie about exactly that.
yeah, yeah. Well, this next one isn't. It's The Witches, which I never watched.
Again, not a horror movie. I can understand why being a little kid it could scare the shit out of you, but it's really not about that. If this is again the one that's based on the Roald Dahl book by the same name, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
so Roald Dahl, every book that he ever wrote, pay attention, dude fucking hated kids. And it's very apparent in his work, and The Witch is a prime example of that.
yeah. If he's doing that, then you gotta. That makes me wonder what's going on. What was going on in his personal life? Because he's obviously venting at that point. It's like Quentin
Yeah,
Tarantino and Feet. It's like
yeah,
you're something's going on.
yeah. No, well,
Um,
no, no. I think he's on record as stating that he hated fucking kids.
like I hate the little MFers.
Yeah, he just did not like children, so he wrote a bunch of horrible stories about bad shit happening to children. Now, because in order to sell those stories, he had to make sure they came out on top in the end. But um, my personal favorite was one called "The Enormous Crocodile." All it did was go around the whole book, and it would chew kids like they were bubble gum until the other animals were like, "Okay, this is sick. You got to knock it off." And he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna keep munching and crunching." And they were like, "No, you can't do that." And he's like, "Who's gonna stop me?" And the elephant grabs him by the tail, swings him around real hard, and launches him into the sun where he boils to death. I fucking love that author, but yeah, he it was not for the faint of heart for a lot of that stuff.
Wow.
And The Witches is right up there. Uh, and Bernie, yeah, man, don't no apology necessary. You're part of the conversation here.
Yeah, yeah. You guys feel free to chime in, man. I mean, we're paying attention
Yeah.
to the chat while we're talking. Now
Get off my lawn!
number 10 is I've never heard of this movie. It's a Japanese psycho horror movie. It's called Audition.
I don't believe I've heard of that one either.
I haven't either, and I'm gonna quickly skip through it because there's a photo of a hand missing two fingers. No, three fingers. Let me skip down to
That sounds like some Saw shit, man.
yeah. In the Mouth of Madness.
That is one of the greatest cosmic horror movies of all time, and not because it's a particularly great movie. It's just there's so much awesome in it. That is part 3 of the John Carpenter Apocalypse trilogy. Stars Sam Neill, and he plays an insurance adjuster or an insurance investigator rather, who gets hired independently by a publishing company because they lost the author, their like best-selling author. Now, a guy named Sutter Kane, who's basically like Stephen King, right? Churns out a bunch of stuff for him, and he got really into writing this last novel and then disappeared. So this guy has to go find him, and he thinks it's a big, publicity stunt, and stumbles into some like outer darkness level shit. And it's great, man. It is great, and it pays homage to a lot of different stuff, specifically to because Carpenter couldn't get permission to actually adapt one of Lovecraft's stories at the time, so he created his own. But it's very much like that. It rips off. I say rips off. I think it pays homage to stories like the Dunwich Horror, the Whisper in Darkness. Just all kinds of this stuff. And it gets really meta at a certain point too. The whole ending gets like really weird, but it makes sense for that movie. So, but yeah, not Carrie. Ozzy was talking about that one earlier when he was talking about the Apocalypse trilogy. It's really good. I like it a lot.
I've heard a lot of good things about it. I've never seen it, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah.
Now, number 8, I've never heard of, but Lord of the Rings director Peter Jackson made it. It's called Dead Alive. Yep.
Dead Alive. I have seen Dead. He made. He got started making schlocky, low budget horror movies. That was what he was known for when he took on Lord of the Rings. Nobody thought he could do Lord of the Rings because that was his bread and butter, was low budget horror movies. And Dead Alive is it's also called Brain Dead, depending on which part of the world you're in. And I think it's probably one of his most famous ones. I saw it once, but I'm pretty sure I was drunk, and I don't remember a lot of details about it.
So, Kill It. Yeah, I've been paying attention to what's happening in Ukraine, man. I think That's going to be addressed on the list tomorrow in some aspects. There's so much going on right now.
Yeah, but that's more of a, yeah, we're not really. It's more of a lioness topic than it
Yeah,
is for what we're doing here tonight, and all that. But yeah, we've been paying attention.
yeah. Which leads us to number 7, Candyman,
Which version?
the first one, 1992.
Excellent movie. Excellent movie. Tony Todd is one of the great has one of the like the greatest all time great like foreboding voices. You
Yeah,
know, and he have you seen it?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. I never had any interest in the Candyman because Tony Todd's just not scary to me. I was
It
like,
is.
really? Come on, dude, you gonna put a hook on Tony Todd? I'm supposed to be scared.
Man, this was my introduction to Tony Todd. Hell yeah. This was my introduction to him before I saw him in anything else. He uh, he basically plays a living urban legend
Yeah,
in it, and it's this is one of Clive Barker's creations. I'm surprised Candyman's on there. Well, not I'm not surprised Candyman's on there. I am kind of surprised Hellraiser's not because the same guy wrote the stories that both of those are based on. The story that Candyman's based on, I think, was called The Forbidden.
yeah, that's what
Um,
it is.
yeah, and it's pretty good. The story's pretty good, but I honestly think that in this case, the movie is better than the story was.
Hmm, that is rare. That's rare.
Yeah, but and it does tie into like slave days and all that stuff because the guy was originally a slave, but he was also a painter. Um, and I think he ends up buying his freedom, but he falls in love with the wrong woman, and you know, horrible shit ensues, and then he becomes an urban legend that kills you if you say his name 5 times. And it all happened in a neighborhood called Cabrini Green in Chicago, which
Of course,
don't
it's in Chicago.
I don't believe that the I think that the neighborhood is fictional, but it's based on some very real places. It's like tenement housing.
Mm,
Um, and Yeah, and it's just the whole thing revolves around like how urban legends like form and what role graffiti and urban murals play in passing these legends down
mm.
to newer younger people and all that stuff. And it was a really interesting examination of how urban legends start, how they work, and how the origins of these things get like obscured, and at the same time a very effective ghost story. So I do very much like that movie quite a bit.
Yeah.
Nope. That's all I'm going to say about that one.
Hills Have Eyes? Nah, I'm good.
Not my bag, man. Radioactive, inbred, cannibal mutants. Like, nope.
The Hills Have Eyes because the cannibals don't.
Hey, Koai, no worries. Thanks for
Yeah,
being
no
here.
worries, man.
Have a great night, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow for Screaming into the Void. And yeah. Otherwise, take care.
Yeah. Now, number 6 is another Japanese movie called that I've never heard of called Cure.
Nope, don't know that one either.
Don't know that one, so we'll skip to 5. The Craft.
Not a horror movie. That is
Not
a
a
teen
horror.
drama.
Exactly.
It is
With
a
some
teen
magic
drama with
thrown in.
supernatural elements, but that's all it
It's
is.
not a horror movie.
Yeah.
Which leads us to 4, Jacob's Ladder.
I have been hearing about that one my whole life. I've never actually watched it.
I've never watched it.
So anybody in chat know that one? I've heard it's very good, but also like very hard to follow because it's
Well, it's based off of it's psychological. It's based off of
yeah, but I
a
think that
shell shocked soldier, basically.
isn't that one wasn't that one filmed in kind of like a Fibonacci sequence and not less linearly?
I think so.
Yeah, again, this is just stuff I've heard. I haven't actually seen it.
Yeah, it's one of those cult films that didn't make a lot of, It made more money, after it was released rather than, when it was released. Sleepy Hollow got number 3.
Why the fuck does that one keep rating so high?
I
I'm gonna disagree like a motherfucker with Carrie on this. Not a fucking horror movie.
it's not.
You
I
know,
think it's more of a dark fantasy.
I would call it a thriller even, but it's and yeah, there's a headless ghost in it who like cuts people up and shit. But again, it's not. I mean, unless you, maybe towards the end where it gets into the whole like blood sacrifice to the tree thing,
Mhm.
maybe. But it's fucking Tim Burton, man.
Yeah.
You know, like I like Tim Burton, but I wouldn't call anything he's ever done horror.
No. No,
You know?
I will say that he did Batman very well.
Yeah, he's done a lot of really great movies. I'm not knocking his ability as a director. I like most of his movies. I'm just saying that I wouldn't call any of them horror.
No, and you can tell when a film is a Tim Burton film, none of it's horror. It might be kind of macabre, you know,
Yeah.
like on that spectrum.
Well,
But
he's got a very specific aesthetic that he uses. That translates into almost everything he does. Even when he does like the pastel shit in Edward Scissorhands, where everything's like little boxes made of ticky tacky.
13 Ghosts,
Um,
Killer, that was a good movie.
which version? Again, because the one that most people think of is actually a remake. The one with Tony Shalhoub.
Yeah, I saw it. I mean, it was
Yeah,
that's what I was
I
talking
liked
about.
it.
I mean,
I do
it
like
was
that
good for
movie.
what it was. It was good for what it was. I mean, definitely, it get your heart racing.
Yeah. Well, most people haven't seen the original version. It didn't gain any traction. I think it came out in the late '60s, early '70s. Um, but this one actually did quite well. When did that come out? Like it was like
The early,
very early 2000s.
yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, it was kind of effective. I think that the ghosts were probably more effective when you didn't see them. Like you couldn't see them, but you could still see that they were doing shit.
Well,
But
certain ones, it
yeah,
was
yeah,
effective when they
that's
were
right.
doing stuff because you could see the effects, but then when you saw them, you didn't want to see them. There were certain ones
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, please go back to being invisible because some
yeah.
of the ghosts. I mean, the effects
The
for the ghost was very well done.
the naked woman with the slash right through her left nipple.
Oh
Right,
my,
she's all cut up all over the place, but one of those cuts goes right through her left nipple, and it's like splayed wide open, and it's just like that shit gets to me every time.
yeah, with
Bernie,
Matthew
Bernie,
Lillard, yeah,
you've seen Jacob's Ladder, Bernie? Because I like we just discussed. Neither of us had actually seen it. Um, agreed. I do like the movie. It's just not a horror movie. Um, and yeah, yeah, Keela, that was that's the one I'm talking about with Matthew Lillard and Tony Shalhoub. Um, because Lillard was the guy with all the gadgets and shit who was saying, "Hey, we shouldn't go into this big weird glass house."
yeah. Well, he was the one that had like visions and stuff. Like he had some kind of ability to feel the ghosts and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was Sleepy Hollow was number 3. You said or 2?
It was number three. Number two is well, I see low ratings. It's The Sixth Sense. I don't think I M Night.
Horror
Every time I
movie.
see M Night Shyamalan, M Night whatever M Night, when yeah,
Shamalama Ding Dong.
I think about I get angry because I think about how he suckered me into watching The Village, thinking it was a scary movie.
No, it's not a scary movie, but I
Not
thought
at
it was
all.
a pretty good one. I know a lot of people shit on that movie, but I liked The Village. I liked most of his movies, as a matter of fact.
It was a good movie, but it was like it was like clickbait for me because
Yeah. See.
the way that the commercials, the way that it was framed in the advertisement was not what that movie was.
Oh, absolutely not.
If I had gone in, knowing what the movie was, how for what it was actually was, it was a great movie, but it was not what they presented in the trailers when they were advertising. It was not at all what was presented,
Yeah. No,
and I was mad as hell.
I will agree with you there, but I think that that's true of most of his movies. They're almost always advertised differently
Differently,
than they are.
yeah,
Uh, like did you see Split?
yeah.
Okay, so Split, I had very little knowledge about that when I went to see it in the theater. Didn't even know it was a Shyamalan movie till like I started watching the movie. Um, and but what I had seen was not the direction that that movie took at all. Like most of the advertising and shit was a whole other animal. I really liked that movie a lot, but again, it's an example of the advertising being in left field compared to where the movie actually is with his movie specifically. I think The Sixth Sense was probably the only one that was dead on balls.
Yeah.
I mean, like the advertising for that movie was pretty much like this kid sees dead people. This dude thinks he can help him with it. They're gonna work on it together, and that's what happens in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, um, I'd worry about spoiling that one, but I'm pretty sure everybody on the planet knows what happens at this point.
Yeah.
But I liked The Sixth Sense. And it is a ghost story. And it does have moments that there are a few jump scares in it, and that are pretty effective. Like with the little girl who was Munchausen to death when she grabs him from under the bed, for instance. That shit got me. You
Yeah.
know? And there are some pretty uh, shockingly graphic um, body horror shots that come out of nowhere, and some creepy shit that just like when he's going to the bathroom and that shape walks in front of the camera for a second.
Mm.
So I think I would probably classify that. Yeah, The Sixth Sense is a horror movie, maybe on the light end, you know,
Mhm.
because it was more of a drama about this kid dealing with the horrifying circumstances of his life. But yeah, it's
Yeah, it is what it is. Oops. It took me forever to realize. But hey, Killer, don't feel bad, man. Everybody knows that the man was dead. We need to get you on here one of these days too.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
need to get you up on here.
We'll have
Um,
to plan that out. I agree, Bernie. I can't show this one for some reason. Hold on a second. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's just slow. Okay. I agree, Bernie. I think The Village had a great twist too, but it was again not a horror movie so much as it was a situational thing. Um, there was another one that he did. Lady, did you ever see Lady in the Water?
no, because I was still pissed about the village.
Okay, so Lady in the Water is exactly what it seems to be. The twist in that movie is that there is no twist. It's a fairy tale set in modern day, but that's all it is a fairy tale, and it's a pretty decent one, I think. But it got a lot of shit because it wasn't, there was no twist. People got to the end of it and they're like, "Where the fuck's the twist?" It's like, no, this was pretty much just straight up what it said it was. No.
That's why I said, man. That's why I don't. That's why I don't watch Shyamalan's movies. I was like, man, this dude's a bait and switch artist. I was
Yeah.
so mad. I'm still salty about the village.
I'm
I'm
pretty
still.
pissed. The Village, I didn't know what to expect from that one myself, and I did like that. The one that pissed me off the first time with him was Signs with Mel Gibson and
Oh
Joaquin
yeah,
Phoenix. I
yeah.
was so bored throughout that whole fucking movie. I've never sat through a Mel Gibson movie, let alone a Shyamalan movie, and been bored. So that was the first for me. But that one, and then Glass, the most recent in his little comic book trilogy.
Yeah.
Um, Glass started out great, but it's like he didn't have any fucking idea where he was going with it, and the ending sucks.
And that's why I didn't bother to watch it.
Yeah, the ending sucks, which is a shame because it has three excellent characters in it.
Mhm.
Played by excellent actors.
And
So
he still couldn't get it right. So, I mean, well, the village is different. The village was done great. The village, it did have some good actors in it. And that's what made me a Bryce Dallas Howard fan. I thought she did great.
yeah, she can be quite good herself when she's not mouthing the fuck off. I don't believe I have seen What Lies Beneath Killa. Actually, I've heard of it. I don't think I ever watched it.
I've heard of it, Killer, and that's a good movie.
Yeah,
With I think it's with
is that Harrison Ford? No.
I think it's Michelle Pfeiffer and Richard Gere, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it's an excellent movie. Um,
Yes, I have seen that. I think like
Apocalypto, yeah,
all
I
of Mel
saw it.
Gibson's movies, it's very well put together, and I enjoyed the shit out of it. It's also extremely historically inaccurate.
Yeah,
But it's a good movie. I enjoyed the shit out of it. I did. But I also spent like a good 4 years
yeah,
studying like Aztec and Mayan culture,
it,
and yeah, yeah, Mel
yeah.
Gibson doesn't know
Apocalypto
what
was
he's fucking
great.
talking about. But
Uh,
yeah, it was a good movie.
Burnaby, you and your wife are always welcome, man. If you guys ever want to pop up, you don't have to show your face, but if you ever want to come on, and like I said, October, we're looking at, as we go into the month of October, we kind of want to, add on to the horror, and kind of maybe do some countdowns. Just, I've got a few ideas that I'm gonna run through, Samuel.
Yeah, run through me
Uh,
like my diarrhea. Uh,
well, moving on. Number one, Silence of the Lambs.
I'm torn on that one. That is a thriller. It's not a horror
It is a
movie.
thriller. It is not a horror
It is
movie.
one of the greatest thrillers ever made,
Yes.
and it has horrifying moments in it, but not a horror movie.
Mm.
It's a really good movie, though.
Have you ever seen the sequel to it? Not the Red Dragon, which I think is a prequel, but the Hannibal.
No, I didn't watch any of the other ones. The only other one I saw was the original version of that was called
Yeah,
Manhunter, and it had Brian Cox playing Hannibal Lecter in
yeah.
it.
Killer knows why I brought up Hannibal. Hannibal. Hey, Samuel, go watch Hannibal. Hannibal was great, especially with that rich guy with the jacked up face. Well, he had this butler named Cordell. He talked like, Cordell, I want to go. Cordell, go do this. Cordell, wipe my butt. Cordell, this. It was
Yeah.
Cordell was so sick and tired of that dude.
Really quick, 7-1. The main point of contention I have with the historical inaccuracies. Now, the language stuff that they did was very, very cool. They because a lot of the native languages at the time, in particular, what the Aztecs spoke, which was Nahuatl, they called it Mayan. It was coming off a lot like Nahuatl, which came like the Mayans disappeared 1,500 years before the Aztecs ever even showed up. Um, and Gibson, throughout his press tour, kept calling the character, the empire that's presented in there, Mayan. He kept saying it was Mayan. Mayans were ancient, by comparison. The Aztecs rose to power um, around the year 1000 and remained so until about 1500 AD when the Spaniards showed up and did all their bad shit. Now, my dates are not accurate here. I'm just throwing out some generalized dates. The problem I had was that he kept calling it Mayan, um, and at the end of the movie, the very end of the movie, they're all standing out on the beach, and this isn't spoiling anything that happens with the characters or anything. It's just like something they sort of tacked on. It feels like, and they're all looking out to sea, and here come three European ships with the white sails. Um, that didn't happen to the Mayans. That happened to the Aztecs. At the
Mm-hmm.
time that the Mayans disappeared off the face of the earth, and they did, they're one of the greatest vanishings in history. Whole culture just gone.
Gone.
Dinner still set, table still set for dinner. I mean, it's just vanished. Um, the Spaniards were still basically, you know, I mean, Rome wasn't even a thing yet. So no, they weren't traversing seas like that. I mean, it was just it. So that's my main point of contention with that. That and everything else that they did in that movie was very much like the Aztecs did it, not so much like the Mayans did. Although the Mayans did a lot of the art infrastructure that the Aztecs used was already there. They basically moved into an abandoned civilization and then built on it, kind of thing. With the exception of, I think Tenochtitlan, they built that from scratch, but they took over Teotihuacan, they took over the territory, um, and all that stuff, and built their empire on the ashes of a long dead one. Uh, so I don't know. That helps clear anything up. No, moving on. October is Christmas in your house. Hell yeah.
Well, that is it for my list. I'm all out.
Oh, fair enough. I think Hellraiser should have been on there, and I don't think
Yeah.
Hellraiser's not scary in the traditional sense. It's again very very unsettling. It's disgusting, and it's the themes it explores are ones that you know they're a little bit more visceral than say a werewolf chasing the kids down.
Mm.
Because and especially in that first movie, the Cenobites aren't even the villains. You know, they're kind of background. They're there, but they're not really what the focus is. The villains are Frank and Julia.
Mm.
And Ashley is your protagonist, and all that. At least in the first movie, and so it's really more about the monster that Frank is, and that Julia becomes, than it is about the seriously screwed up, dudes in leather bondage gear that come out of a portal. You know? They don't really focus on those guys until they focus more on them in the second film, and then it's pretty much solely that from then on, and then it gets weird towards the end of the series. But for those of you who missed my exposition on the entire Hellraiser series, it's at the beginning of the stream.
Yeah.
I went on for a while. Yeah, no worries, dude. It was a thing at the time. Before that movie came out, I was really interested in Aztec culture, and I started learning a lot more about the pictographs that they used to write with, and went on a bunch of tours. They had an exhibit that was going around the country of Aztec artifacts and that sort of thing, and it ended up at the local Museum of Natural History, and I went probably 18 times, I think, just to just to look at the artifacts they had. And they had a scale model of the temple of Quetzalcoatl and Huitzilopochtli at Teotihuacan, or no, not Teotihuacan, at Tenochtitlan. Teotihuacan, Temple of the Sun, there I think was revered for sacred reasons, but it was differently used. Anyway, so one of the two gods was worshipped on the one side, that would be the feathered serpent, and then the other one, who is the sun god, who is the guy pictured in the center of the calendar with a heart in each hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's who they were sacrificing hearts to. They fed to him to ensure that he would continue to rise and bless their crops and shit. It's interesting because the temple is literally split into two with the steps. So there's like a raised part in between each side, all the way down the steps. And on one side, it's just, nice, and on the other side, there are bloodstains that date back hundreds of years, just spilling down where they sacrificed other slaves and shit. Yeah, and it's not the only time. Like, most people in the country in America know about Roanoke, for example, which was America's first colony. And everybody, guy named John Smith, not John Smith. Fuck, I can't remember his name. Anyway, the guy who founded the colony had to go back to England for supplies, and he got stuck there for 3 years. And when he came back, everybody was gone, just gone, with the word Croatoan carved into a fence post.
Mm.
There was a battalion, a Chinese battalion, and I cannot remember if this is in World War I or II, but they were marching off to go fight the Japanese. So probably II, because the Japanese, I think, had at that time occupied Korea. And a battalion of, I think, something like 20,000 troops
Mm-hmm.
vanished en route, never to be seen or heard from again, still missing. It just kind of goes that way sometimes. There's a bunch of different shit like that. So, but all right, folks, I think we're probably going to wrap it up tonight. We will see you tomorrow, hopefully, for Screaming into the Void, 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and it will we'll be talking about a different subject. I think possibly medicine and sci-fi is something that came up. Kat and I were discussing. So, and Kat, the Hijabby Gamer, will be joining us. Hopefully, we'll have Maester Chow this week, and possibly Lawrence. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I
um,
usually have a lot going on Saturday, which is why you guys haven't really seen me on there. But yeah, possibly.
yeah. So appreciate you guys all coming out, hanging with us, and letting us just kind of geek out on some stuff that we enjoy, as opposed to all the horrible shit that's in the world. So yeah, appreciate you guys coming. No, thank you guys for the stream. Everybody here, everybody watching at home on YouTube and all that stuff. Glad to have you. Glad to see you. Night, everybody, and remember, it could always be worse. It could be
Yeah,
raining flaming cobras.
that's right.